Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be making some biofuel from sunflower oil. Now it would be nice to have some old sunflower oil that I can recycle, but that's going to require more steps like drying and filtering, and I don't want to do that. So store-bought oil I'm going to be using, and I'm also going to be using 95% ethanol. Preferably you want a high concentration of ethanol to limit the amount of moisture and water in your reaction. The water will react with the sodium hydroxide and glycerin that's going to be formed for a reaction called saponification, and that you don't want because that will decrease your yield of biofuel, and we want the most yield we can achieve. So the process is going to be like this. I'm going to mix the sodium hydroxide with the ethanol, heat it up to 50 degrees, make sure the sodium hydroxide is fully dissolved. Then I'll preheat the oil separately to around 60 degrees, and then once everything is heated and the sodium hydroxide is dissolved, I'll mix the two with fast stirring. I'm going to random RPM and make sure the heating is still around 60 degrees. You don't want it to get it too hot, and I'll let that run for about an hour. By then there should be two layers. One is a glycerin layer and the other one is my biodiesel that I'll separate using a separatory funnel, and with that in turn, well, I will distill the biodiesel to try and purify it and wash it. Alright, let's do that. Alright, so 2.7 grams is going to be weighed. I had to switch to potassium hydroxide. Hopefully this doesn't make too much of a difference. The sodium hydroxide container that I bought it in is actually not airtight, and water seeped in and now it's wet. That didn't happen. 2.6. Right, so the 216 milliliters of ethanol is now going to be added to this flask. And I'm going to increase the stirring so that all the sodium hydroxide can be dissolved. And I'll start heating it to try and get it up to 50 degrees C. This is what I had to do to try and get the thermometer to sit flush into the ethanol. Yeah, that is just balancing on the lip of this joint, and I've got the rubber stopper there. And the worst part is that half of this covers the temperatures, so I have to like look underneath. I just need to know when it gets near 60 degrees, and then I can adjust the temperature. Right, so the oil has reached temperature, and now I'm going to pour the ethanol into the oil and continue mixing it and heating for about an hour. I really hope this doesn't turn into soap, because I spilled the tiniest amount of water when I was trying to rinse the flask with oil because I've overheated it, so I rinsed it with water to try to bring it down to temperature. I guess we'll just see what happens. And this is my last bit of ethanol, otherwise I'm going to have to fractionally distill more, and I really don't want to do that. Alright, so I'm going to let this heat and stuff for about an hour. So it's been running around for an hour now. The temperature was not kept constant at 60. The temperature control on this thing is not very good. It got up to around, it even started to boil the ethanol, so I brought it down and it stayed around 80 and then dropped to 70, stayed around 70 for a bit. And now it's still at 60. It's been at 60 for a good like half an hour at least. So that's good. And yeah, so now I'm going to stop the stirring and move it on to the separatory funnel and let the two layers separate. Alright, so I've come back the next morning, and as you can see there's two very clear layers, or actually three clear layers. I believe the middle layer is possibly oil and maybe a glycerin layer, and the bottom layer I think is a water soapy layer. And yeah, so now I'm just going to drain the waste product, which is the bottom layers, and then this should be my biodiesel at the top, or biofuel. Right, so I've transferred the biofuel into this 100 milliliter round bottom flask, and I think I'm going to do a fractional distillation and purify this. And that's why I think I'm gonna not wash it with 5% phosphoric acid to get rid of the sodium hydroxide. So I think the distillation will do quite well. So the distillation has been set up. I know this looks a bit weird, but yeah, that's what I've decided to use. And yeah, and let's see how long it takes for this to boil over, or let alone maybe if it will. Alright, so the distillation setup has been done, and this is what it looks like. You've got the fractional column on the left and the Dimmoth condensers on the right. You can see this pump is practically dying. Not sure how to fix that. Probably not going to touch it. If it works, it works. And yeah, so see you later. So after fractionally distilling the crude biofuel, I've noticed that I only got ethanol that came over. Alright, so here's the crude biofuel, and this is a different method, same process but a different chemical. So this time I didn't use ethanol, I used methanol, and I let it react on the stirrer for a lot longer, something around 3 hours, with very mild heating. It slowly went up from like 30 to 60, which within like 2 hours. So very mild heating, and I let it settle in the separation funnel overnight. I believe there were 3 layers. The bottom layer is the glycerin layer, the middle layer is your biofuel layer, and at the top layer, if there is your little bit of soap layer if there was any water. So this is the middle layer here. As you can see, I started with 240 milliliters of methanol. As you can see, this is a lot more volume for now in the crude amount, and I used 400 milliliters of oil and 1.15 grams of potassium hydroxide as the catalyst. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to take this and put this back into the separation funnel, and I need to wash it with hot water because there is still some unreacted methanol in here and I can smell it. Alright, so I'm going to get onto that now. Alright, so this is the final product of biofuel. After doing a few washes with hot water, the solution got really murky, and I left it for about 3 days, and it finally cleared up and separated into 2 layers. Then after that I washed it a few more times, it got a bit murky, and then it separated in a few layers after a day, and I think that was because of a bit of soap forming. So then I think I washed it with just a little bit of nitric acid and water, just to make it a little bit, to take out if there is any sodium hydroxide left over. And this is after about a week or so, and it's pretty clear. And now I'm going to do a quick burn test on it. This stuff won't ignite on itself, well, mine doesn't, so I'm not really sure, but it works well if you soak it in cotton wool and compare between 1 lit in cotton wool and 1 not, and you can actually see quite a big difference, which I'll show you now. If I did this again, which I'm not going to, but I would probably use less sodium hydroxide than what I used. And yeah, so I do think this is the biofuel here, and yeah, so I'll show you a quick burn test. Alright, so I've added some of the biofuel here on this watch glass, and yeah, so I'm just going to take a piece of this cotton wool here and soak it in it. So you can see it soaking, and then just take a lighter and try and ignite the cotton wool. And this way you can compare seeing both the cotton wool and when it reaches the biofuel, and the difference. Okay. So when it moves to the biofuel, it's going to become a little bit more brighter, and it won't burn because the biofuel will be burning and not the cotton wool. Kind of like how a candle works with the wick. That the wick never burns, but the paraffin goes up the wicks. And as you can see there, it's brighter, and it's going to actually burn around the biofuel area. There you go. There's a little bit of soot coming off, but not much at all. I think this experiment was quite successful with this demonstration here. As you can see, it's burning around, and the middle part with the biofuel there is not burning yet because the biofuel is burning. Alright, and that sums it up for this video. So thank you everyone for watching. I don't recommend following this video to make your own. I'm sure do your own research, because this was very not very accurate with measurements and so this was very crude. But I mean, I did get a decent result. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Cheers.